Yo,
Sir,
what's
how are
going
you?
on? I'm all right, mate. I'm all right. I'm sitting in the city gym, so I'm at my home away from home here, and downtown Sydney, Darlinghurst, actually. Kind
Nice.
remember we went for some burgers when you were here doing the last Sydney tour, and we went you probably don't remember, but we went and had some burgers. It's just up the street, so not far from there.
Actually, I do. I can't say as I remember why, but it was dark, like
Yeah,
wooden bar table type deals.
correct. Yeah, we went and Hollywood was there. Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. I do remember.
Yeah, yeah. So just down that same street, just down about 400 or 500 meters.
Nice.
That's my gym. Shout out to City Gym, all the boys here. If anyone sees it, come
Absolutely.
on down. So
I
what's been
literally,
happening?
I literally just got in last night from Toronto. Presented Saturday and Sunday in
Oh,
Toronto.
yeah, yeah. How did that all go? Because that's Hollywood's hometown.
It is. It was. So it was super easy because we had an easy. Um, it's nice. It's Canada's a funny place, but the short answer is it's nice. They're nice. There's
Yeah,
not a lot to bitch about. Um,
yeah,
so yeah, it was a good time.
yeah. I haven't been that side. I've been that side, New York, but I
I
haven't
see.
been that side, Canada. So I've always been Vancouver, in a little bit when I back in the day when I used to go snowboarding. So I traveled
Oh,
around
I
there a
see.
little.
Yeah.
Really, I gather it's much prettier on the other side. Toronto, not overly like crazy, no crazy mountains and things like that, but they're all kind of in the middle.
Yeah. Strangely, I mean, this is I've been there a million years ago, high school, whatever. But this is the first time I've really had a reason to go there, explore it, etc. And the Great Lakes are magnificent, beautiful to see,
Mm.
but the kind of surrounding terrain was, to be fair, a little bit disappointing. It just sort of flat, rolling. It's not Pennsylvania, New York. You're jagged and mountainous and interesting, and Canada's kind of not like everything else about Canada. It's just kind of nice.
Yeah, yeah. I think there's because you love and the guys may or may not know you love train trips. You love traveling by train. I think there's quite
I do.
a you can come from. Is it Mammoth Basin or somewhere up and come down? Is there like a quite a famous railway you could go down? Or
There is, and in fact, I may actually imbibe in that very thing. There's a train that actually goes from the outskirts of Toronto all the way to Alaska, and I'm
Hmm.
really interested in that.
Yeah, likewise. I have a this thing for trains as well. I don't know what it is, but I just love it. It's good.
So now, if
Oh,
I'm not mistaken, you had a bit of a competitive weekend over the last. So
yeah.
what secrets do you have?
So we had a couple of shows. So we had the IFBB Pro League, which is NPC for you guys, I think. Although I think that it's called Pro League over there now as well. But we had the states. We had the Queensland show a week before that, and then I had the state show in New South Wales because I'm based in New South Wales. We had that show, and then last weekend I had NABA. So I think you would be aware of NABA. So a NABA show on the Sunday. Saturday was an INBA show, and the weekend before, when we had the Pro League show, was an ICN. That's a federation here in New South Wales in Australia. I compete natural, so they had a boo hiss, but had a few athletes I was fortunate enough to work with for that one. And then this weekend, the big Pro League National. So I fly up to Queensland Friday. I have one athlete in classic physique and one in figure. Donna, you would be familiar with. Nathan in classic, you've seen pics of, but you're not overly familiar with him. But Donna, I've worked with for many seasons, so I'm lucky that she keeps coming back for more. But you saw the lead up pics, and I think one of the comments was, "Man, she looks like she's serious. She's got the mass on, just standing there checking pics." So pretty happy with her body weight's up, and the qualifier she did a couple of weeks ago now and she did well in her categories, which was awesome. And the look was what we wanted to do, like just a bigger. She always gets, as you know, that really kind of almost sinewy, bit too lean for figure, really.
Absolutely.
Well, not too lean. They don't need to be that lean, I suppose. And so this time around, we didn't really drive things aggressively. It was like she said, the prep was kind of the easiest one she had done, and calories I think didn't get below 1,600 or around about that number, which is pretty high. Coming into. I think she's still on about that. She might have dropped down a little bit there in the last week or two, but long story short, nice, easier prep for her, and the look was good. She was hulking about on stage, from the side. When the girls kind of walk and the hamstrings are bugging out, and the glutes are still nice and full. And this is for someone that had striated glutes last time, which maybe she doesn't need that for figure, but so really happy with that look, and didn't rev the engine stupidly hard, chose not to, and body weight's up. So all the data that I track in the background kind of boxes are being ticked. And obviously I bounced off you throughout the whole prep, as I always do. And each kind of check-in, you gave me the thumbs up and said, yeah, she looks like about where she needs to be. But interestingly, because I said to her it was a different prep, and I know you don't get too caught up with the psychology of athletes. It's kind of, well, this is what you need to do, just do it, and does not compute if they say, yeah, but, and the demographic you work with are typically tried and tested. I mean, the pro-ish, closer to that world compared to my world of amateurs. But there was kind of, I'm not quite as lean as what I would be at this point in time from her, and just the SOS, okay, like I'm looking at the data each week because I do the skin fold, which I believe you're a fan of as well for physique prep specifically. And so they were all kind of just tracking a little bit slower, simply because we didn't need to be there any quicker, because she tends to get there and then kind of wither away to at the end. So there was kind of like, well, it's a different look. We're deliberately trying to present something different. We want to kind of get up there and be critiqued for something other than, you need a little bit more fullness. You need to come in a little rounder, a little bigger to take on the open class, because she does masters. So, I mean, I was kind of, there's always the unknown that we don't know as a coach, but, we'll kind of track in all the bits and pieces, and it was all kind of, I think you've done the analogy, shooting the arrows, and they're all coming down at the right point, which will be this weekend, and we'll see. Either way, independent of placings, the physique that we decided to present is what we have kind of created, and judging is out of our hands, and it may or may not go away. I think there's always a little bit of luck, which I want to talk to you about today. Actually, one of the topics, but so that's Donna's story, but she's
nice.
Good place, man. That'll be this weekend. So next time we chat, I'll be able to give you the goss. But that's out.
The real magic there. I mean, I think, myself even included, the real gratification is kind of drawing this blueprint of, this is what I want to happen, and then to be able to execute that plan and make that happen. Even if the goal was a miscalculation, the acquisition of the goal is a score.
Yeah. That's exactly what I kind of said to her, and I prefaced it with, well, I don't know if this is going to be a better look on stage, and the placings be better than what she normally does well in her masters category, but the opens, she's up against 20-year-old, 21-year-olds.
Yep.
So and some crazy girls here in Australia compete in figure. So for us to, and we've done it a few times, like each time was a bit better, a little bit more condition, a little bit more muscle, but pretty similar looking physique. But this was, when I kind of sat back and followed the arms in the auditorium watching her come out, it was like, yeah, this is a different look, and that is the success. And at her, I mean, not that she's old, I mean, she's younger than us, but for her to significantly alter her physique with more more muscle mass is and that's after pushing muscle mass, specifically the growth of, for multiple years, albeit she has, like I always do, I do like to have the athlete do a prep and then have time off. They get their life back and then do whatever they want to do, and then they give us a holler and we go into another prep. But this was a 50-week prep, so we had more time to periodize things. And you have kind of, I guess, been one of the many that have influenced me more so than a lot of others. But you kind of, well, this is the end date. Well, we need about this much time to kind of get the body fat off, which gives us, you're starting here, so we got about this many weeks, so let's go into a growth for this long. We'll assess body composition, maybe do a cut here, and then change XYZ there, and then that last hurrah with things kind of climaxing at this weekend. So yeah, the everything I've kind of rods each week, put into practice, and it's just like a good example of everything. And it doesn't always work out like that,
of course not. That's almost the fun of it.
Yeah, that's there lies the challenge. But yeah, super excited to see her on stage this Sunday, and then again a long prep 50. So Nate kind of gave us a holler, and he's in the Evil Genius group. He often, the boys were saying this, and I'm like, I'll have to kind of check with you what was said, because there's so many in there contributing. And if the guys aren't aware, the Evil Genius members only site, if you're not part of it, get into it. But him a long prep as well. So he gave us a holler, had competed actually with a mutual friend of ours, James Cant, who you would be well aware of, and
absolutely
someone that we helped for. I think it was Tahiti was our last.
Absolutely.
And then he did his own thing since then, and he's had a little ball baby. I should know whether it's a boy or a girl, but he's living happily ever after up in Queensland. He's up north where you've been to. But so Nate had competed a couple of times before, and then gave me basically a year to get him or close to it, to get him ready for this show. So again, had lots of time to periodize things and do various growth phases, and his actual fat loss specific kind of programming was, compared to others, relatively short. It was it might have been like 12 weeks at the end, but the skin folds are in check, so we're tracking all the data. So we had a good slog at getting his muscle mass up as best we could. And he's based down in Canberra. Which, did you went to Canberra? Or you didn't get down to Canberra?
I did not.
Yeah. So that's where Parliament House is and all that stuff down here. Australian Capital Territory, the ACT.
One of the places I want to go, but off topic, but I'll just throw it out there. For the reasons mainly being YouTube, long story. But I want to go to Adelaide. That is my new desire. I want to do that.
Yeah, well, that's where I was born, down in Adelaide. I spent the first 10 years of my life down there. Many moons ago. Left there in '84. So for anyone watching, will get an idea of how old I am. And you're slightly older than me. So
I am.
I'm the spring chicken in this situation. But so yeah, plenty of time, and Nathan has a posing coach, good friend of his, Viv, down. Shout out to Viv. He's a coach himself down in Canberra. Amazing guy and a good posing coach. So he had some tuition from him, and I don't get involved in the and actually you're quite confident at coaching posing, but I pose with the guys every week when they come and do a check-in. We'll go into the group fitness and hit the downlights and run through all the poses and get progress pics. But I don't necessarily like to, unless they're like an absolute beginner, and then the basics of like bodybuilding or classic I could do, but and men's physique to a degree. But any of the other classes I don't get into. But Viv, his posing coach, said that he had made lots of progress. His physique was looking really good. So it's always nice to get a little. I mean, I think he looks fantastic, and I've seen him kind of transform over the week. So it's exciting that others have acknowledged that he's made some really good progression, which is always the name of the game. And he will be better on stage this time around than what he was 3 weeks ago.
So you can ask.
With a bit of luck, and that was better than the previous time he was on stage. So he's the other guy I've got up this weekend, and then I have one doing the IFBB within Australia. I know it's I don't know if you have the two IFBBs over in the US, but we've got IFBB Pro League and IFBB Australia, which IFBB Australia has the Elite Pro category. Yep. So they're actually having their New South Wales and National Championships this weekend. They had the Universe last weekend over in Western Australia. Mike O'Mara put that show on. It was a really good show. Nick Jones, if you're familiar with Nick Jones, he won. I know the name. Yeah, he's been in the game for a little while. NABA background, and he's done all sorts of shows, but he got the nod over there. He won the Mr. Universe title, which is really good in bodybuilding. So I have an athlete, Michael, who's competing in the Elite on Saturday. So I've set everything up for him. But yeah, to basically summarize, busy, fortunately busy for me this time of year. I had a really good group of athletes that I work with, and humbled to be able to do what I do on a daily basis, and especially with this crew that dot I's, cross T's, and tick all the boxes, which does make my job a lot easier. Plus, I got some other girls that I've helping, and actually this weekend there is also Ivan, who my Russian guy that I coach, Golozov, awesome, and very Russian-esque kind of check-ins. Minimal discussion, but gets the job done, and very methodical when he engages the plan. But he competes, so he won the open class in men's physique ICM a couple of weeks ago. So now he's doing his end goal, which is nationals, and he'll have a crack at the open class at nationals in men's physique. So we actually do things. Yeah, I got a lucky there. I think everything just came together really well on the day. When we timed the pump up, it wasn't excessively long. He didn't flatten out, and everything. All the theatrics of peaking for a natural athlete, which I've kind of done quite a bit of mentoring with the likes of Dr. Scott Stevenson and yourself, and bounce things off you, and you're kind of like, well, it's not my cup of tea, but yeah, I can see what you're doing, and yeah, it just seems to work really well in that situation. He was bone dry, and his conditioning was good.
Fantastic.
So this time around, we actually did just carved him up more like your approach. So it was like a 2-day kind of carving up affair. For this one, it was just a 1-day the last time. So this time, depleted him down a little bit. His body weight's down probably 1.5 kilos on what he was a couple of weeks ago. So nice and depleted, and I load him up today, tomorrow. That will be Wednesday, Thursday here, and then Friday I'll play around, drying him out, doing what I do, and then he'll do Saturday. So hopefully it all is a repeat. I mean, we kind of had a trial run at State, so we've done a similar version for this one with the addition of that extra day carb loading. So yeah. That's kind of a summation of my world at the moment, Broads. But busy.
Fairly exciting. Right now, we're all just kind of sitting around holding our breath on the IFBB Olympia, which I'll be traveling to fucking 2 weeks. God.
Yeah.
But yeah, things are. I would say in neutral, but there's tension in the air, but nothing to do on the momentary basis. Just kind of getting everybody to kicked into marching, or march step.
And who's is it Mr. Hollywood? I think yours is who's going down.
I almost said unfortunately, but that's a blatant lie. It's just me being frustrated. It's actually a privilege, but literally, with the unfortunate exception of yourself, everyone's coming. It's myself, Hollywood, Mircha, David Herrera, Uris, Andrew Hudson, Juji Mufu, some of the Canadian guys. Like, there's going to be a constant revolving door of anabolic craziness.
Awesome.
in our sphere. So yeah, it's
2 weeks,
gonna be
mate. I might
a lot.
pull the finger out and get a wriggle and come over. You never know.
Do you know Andreas Pappas, Greek Spartan?
Yeah.
He's coming.
Wow.
Yeah, it's gonna be a fiasco. It really, really is.
Well, you know what happens in Vegas, like not that we'll go into the story, but let's hope Mr. Herrera
No,
behaves
it'll be fine.
and
Disneyland's about the most dangerous thing in our sphere. No, actually, I'm lying. That's not true. But we'll be fine. It's going to be a good time. And then it's a petty thing in the big picture. But the Olympia is really Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, but it's mostly Saturday and Sunday. The third and fourth. Saturday being third, Sunday the fourth. The fifth, which is the Monday, my 52nd birthday.
Yeah, was it the Monday the 5th? Huh? All right.
At the very least, we're gonna stop and have an ice cream cone or something. And
absolutely, there'll be coffee involved too.
I think so.
I'll have to. I want to send over some more coffee. I know how to keep you happy. That's about all I need to do for you. 100%. What I mentioned before, luck. Looking back at kind of having some success with a few of the athletes I've been involved with of late. And not doing anything. I guess there's the more you're in the trenches doing that, the better your skill gets of navigating the how many categories beforehand, and should I pump up? Just chill, put your feet up. We don't, while everyone's pumping up around you. So I suppose the more you do it, you get better at it. But I honestly do think that there is a big amount of luck that has to come into the equation for everything just to come together as it should or as planned on competition day. And as much as we can kind of orchestrate things, I honestly do think, looking back, that it's just luck. Like your division didn't get stalled, and the pump that you had initiated is unfolding as we speak, and timed perfectly for when you walk on stage. Independent of trialing all these things and kind of getting a fair idea of how it's going to come together. But I just think that, what the placings with the athletes all being kind of similar condition, with the exception, of course, of someone notably better than the athlete next to them. But I honestly think that there's just a huge amount of luck, because I mean, what are your thoughts? That's what I wanted to kind of get to. And
I have some input, but actually, before the kind of useful input, on a almost philosophical level, and actually not even almost on a blatantly philosophical level, I actually believe luck is, and I believe this. This is not a sort of a a whiny kind of thing, like an excuse or even an explanation exactly. I believe luck is your interpretation of your efforts. Meaning, there used to be a quote, I say used to be, I guess it still is, sort of luck favors the prepared mind.
Okay, yeah.
I believe that, but what I actually believe a little deeper is, luck is, or at least what you interpret as luck, is really just acknowledgement that you're now good enough to do the thing, sort of make the right subconscious decisions, that it looks like luck, but it's the reality is you're fucking skilled on on both a skill level and sort of an intuition level. So the things you're calling luck is really just your intuitions giving you good advices.
Yeah. I can see that for sure.
I realize that sounds very much like an arrogance, but trust me when I say I'm not always lucky. but when I am, I believe that I've internalized something maybe without even knowing it, and made good decisions that resulted in good luck.
Yeah. Like I said, it's kind of, I think the more you're immersed in that world, the more lucky you seem to be.
100%, which dovetails nicely with experience, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But what I would
Exactly.
say is, I think I heard out of you kind of the key word, and that was, sort of the, take your time. We didn't pump up too soon. We didn't pump up too fast. And unfortunately, the most valuable trait as a backstage manager is
Yeah.
confidence and casualness, which are the two things that you never fucking have in the heat of the moment when shit's going down.
Yeah.
But I'm maybe inappropriately famous for being very just, well, it'll be fine, just relax, and
Mm.
that is sort of my defense against the hustle, bustle, and panic of backstage. But I
Yeah.
see you developing something similar, but dare I say, a bit more professional. Mine can actually seem a bit like disgust and disinterest, but I
Yeah.
see you developing a bit of a, I would honestly just describe it as a confidence that you know best. And quite frankly, it appears that you do.
Well, I don't know if I know best, but yeah, like putting some method to the madness, I guess, and kind of not experimenting, I suppose, or hey, let's do this. Like, no, we don't need to do that. And I do get those questions backstage, and it's like, and I think like you're suggesting you are, I'm a little bit, or can be come across that way as well. It's kind of, they will place quite well on stage and look for that kind of that we did good. I said, yeah, we did good. Look, okay, we've got another division. Go down, put your feet up. Have you got your meal? And it's kind of on to the next task at hand. It's just still work to be done. And I think that often, then they reach for their partner, their girlfriend, or whatever, or boyfriend, and get some. You did amazingly well, and get the pat on the back that they're looking for from them, but our work's not done. My job's not done as the coach backstage. We've
100%.
the guy
And
doing.
even if it's done with that athlete, it's usually not done for the day. So it's very hard to, at least for me, to flip
Yeah.
in and out of, happy celebratory mode and, cranky scientist mode. And so I just fucking shoot the middle, and that's who I am.
Yeah, it's interesting. I had a conversation with, it wasn't the athlete I was working with last Sunday, but it was someone I knew and a colleague in the industry, and he was talking about he'd just been on stage and had a look, and I said, "You looked amazing. Still, the lower body needs to be a little harder," because I was aware of his physique in classic physique, and he actually is working with John Torelli, who you would know.
Yeah.
I actually chatted with John because I was sitting in the audience, and I said, "Oh,"
Wow.
because he elbowed him and said, "Hey, I mentor with this a good friend of mine in the US called Broderick. You wouldn't know him, I don't think. Maybe he does, but I said he knows of you, and he said you were quite a crazy mofo back in the day and throwing some serious weight around in the weight room, like a legendary kind of I guess mythical, legendary." Yeah, train the house down kind of bodybuilder from back in the day. But he, so for what it's worth, and then he had a chuckle and he said, "Oh, thank you for me." So anyway, little soft through the wheels, and but he said, he said it's just it's strange. Like every time I kind of compete, I will be a little soft for stage, but then when I get home, I've had something to eat. I'm relaxed, in inverted commas. He said, my legs always look amazing, comparatively speaking, to where he is on stage. Like he gets the definition, everything looks really good. So I wanted to kind of unpack, while I've got your thoughts on that, because I shared mine with him. He put me on the spot, and I said, well, obviously there's manipulation of salt and water, nutrition, post-show, but there's also a significant going from a sympathetic state to a parasympathetic state, less stress hormones, less adrenaline, everything else. So yeah, what would your thoughts be in that?
Right.
Because I do find that, those individuals that just worry themselves, and we have discussed this before, into a watery mess, and you see this potentially outside of, you suggesting that no, they're 4 weeks out, they're still too fat, but some are conditioning is good, but whatever they do, they stress themselves out, and something happens, and they look just this watery film. And
well, here's how I would approach that. And by the way, not like this is not like hypothetical. This is how I approach that, because exactly what you're describing happens a lot. So what I would do is I say, okay, we followed a timeline that ended with you're on stage, 10 a.m. Saturday afternoon. However, you looked better at 10 p.m. at home, in your underwear in front of your refrigerator. So now we have 2 data points already. We have the target and then the I looked better. So we put them on a timeline and we say, well, here they are. And then we think to ourselves, all right, what do we know influences appearance? And we would say things like carbohydrates, water, ions, sodium, potassium, and then the one you mentioned, and stress. So we've got 4 things to determine what the problem was. Now, depending on the environment which this is in terms of like, is this a warm-up show? Is this the big deal? Is this the last show? Is there more bandwidth to maybe, okay, let's peak again in 2 weeks, show or not, and trial something? So one thing we could trial is, we know we have a 12-hour split between stage and looked good. Let's just move everything 12 fuck hours. Let's just move every single thing on our little checklist by 12 hours. We prepare as if, everything's 12 hours earlier than it was last time. Ideally ending in that look 12 hours later on the stage. This, because of 24-hour clocks and what have you, this can be a little weird, but it accomplishes one thing. It basically brings us to, was it the time or was it the stress? If that works, if we move everything 12 hours and basically, you do the stage and then 12 hours later, you do not look better.
Yeah.
You see what I mean? Then you can say it was the timing because you didn't continue to get better. However, if you do all of that and you still look better 12 hours later, then you could say the thing we didn't test is the thing that happened in those missing 12 hours, which is probably the stress.
Okay.
You see what I mean? You've got 4 items, but roughly speaking, you can split it into 2 tests. Move it. If you get it, you're done. If you move it, you don't get it. It's probably the thing you didn't check, which is the stress. Then if it's the stress, that makes the world both easy and hard. Easy in that you know what the fucking problem is. Hard in that, how do you go through that whole routine of contest prep in the final 48 hours without stress? That's the fucking magical nut that I haven't fully cracked, to be fair, but at least you can bifurcate it into a legitimate test and see what's what.
Yeah. So before, let's come to the stress one in a second, because I want you to maybe just throw some ideas around on how you would tackle that one. Obviously, practicing.
Practicing's definitely one
that would still kind of relieve, well, potentially relieve, but it's still the Olympia stage. You can practice it all you want in your local gym and do your peak, but it's still not quite getting up on that stage. So how would we tackle that? But before you go there, when you say you could go 12 hours earlier, you could probably play around with, because it may just be the whole 12 hours earlier. It may be you added, maybe you added more water and then you got drier, or you had more carbohydrates or salt.
True. And there might be a way to tweak those final 48 to make it not have to start at some ridiculous hour of the morning. But what I'm saying is, if this is you did a show, you got this result, and you're still in shape and you still have this plan, the easiest way is just recreate the plan minus 12, just debiting to 12 hours rather than sit down and try and rework the entire engine. Why not just run the same test in a different time zone?
And would you I mean, if it is an athlete that does intend, and this guy does, he does shows. This is not his first time on stage, because we kind of, and I'm guilty of this. This is something, and now I'm putting it out in the universe. It kind of makes sense to me that I should be encouraging the athlete to do this. And I know you're a stickler for book. You know, you could tell the guys that you've got all your training data for the last 500 years of training. Do we also want to, because if he had tracked everything after show, had, you know, X amount of water, had a Powerade, ate some clean carbohydrate, whatever the case may be, or maybe not clean, maybe he went and had the McDonald's or a burger or got something salty or fatty in there. Is it, should they be tracking, like, regardless of all this? Do you think that post, you know, if they do,
you're going down a rabbit hole that's really going to kind of maybe show my crazy, but I honestly believe you should journal fucking everything. You know, when I say everything, I mean everything. Like partial, like Dear Diary, like, you know, 2 days before the show, I'm excited, I'm scared to death, whatever the fuck. And then all your food, all your water, all of your travel. Who are you with? What is your surroundings? Maybe it's just some shitty person in your orbit. So you write down who you're with, what you're doing. What is the temperature in the room? Do you like your room? Does your room have a view? Does your room look fucking dark? You should write down everything. What's the quality control of the thing? What's the water pressure on the fucking nozzle in the shower? You should write shit down. Backstage, same thing. Like, you know, who do you interact with? Is it warm? Is it cold? Are you standing? Are you sitting? What the fuck is there a microwave? Is there not? Is your food cold? And write down everything.
When did you
Most
start?
of it will be nonsensical, but some of it may be phenomenally valuable data points. And two, now you've actually journaled the thing that you've trained your whole life for, this big thing. You've actually now chronicled it. Now you know the good and the bad and all the details in the middle.
Yeah. And if I suppose in the same breath you'd say, if it all worked really well and you peaked it to perfection, then you want to do a carbon copy of that in a week's time or 2 weeks' time.
I will give you a strange, and again, like kind of giving away my crazy, a strange example, but you know me, Rowdon, and probably everyone listening to this knows me. I drink fucking 10 cups of coffee a day. I've been making 10 cups of coffee a day for 48 years or some shit. But to this day, I still journal my coffee. I still, what brand of coffee I'm grinding, what number I grind it on, how much I weigh out, what I put it in the fucking filter, what temperature's the water, how long did it take for the drawdown, how long between finishing the cup and actually putting it to my mouth did I wait? I journal all of that shit on all 10 cups of coffee I drink. 99.5% of them are identical, but every once in a while I get a really good or a really bad cup. I run to my fucking journal.
Just because you find it interesting.
Yes. Not even, see, that's the thing. Like that's such a, and I don't want to go all fucking weird, but like that's such a generic, like, oh, it's interesting. Like, you know, like the fuzz on the fucking, on the stuck to my jeans is interesting. This is something that's, it's you know, it's life. Like if I don't have that cup of coffee, like things are going to go real bad for myself and many others. So I see that journal as like setting the universe correct. Like every day that I journal a cup of coffee is a day I didn't get on the roof and shoot people.
So you can be at peace.
So
relatively peaceful. Yeah. Okay. I mean, this is good. Like you know, because we're competition day, I kind of just, I probably don't document it enough. Like
and dare I even say, and this is a little, you know, again, this is friendly advice, helpful criticism. This is not, you know, negative to you in the slightest, but I even wonder if you as a coach should be doing that. What are you doing? And also, what do you see the athlete doing? Like, holy shit, they look geeked out of their fucking mind, or they look dopey, or quiet, or confused, or scared, or then later you and the athlete can sit down and compare notes, and suddenly If he says, "Hey, I was scared shitless," and you look at your notes and it says he looks like he was scared shitless, you have something in common to fucking talk about now.
Yeah.
That's a thing.
So even just like you can have standardized kind of, well, not necessarily reading them off a piece of paper, but like questions to how's the headspace, what are you thinking about, and they're like,
Well, I mean, that's a technique. It's not one that I use, but that is, in fact, even I know you're very big on sort of like digital rapport with your athletes. That is definitely something you could do, is put together a little checklist, say every hour, just go in and, excited, anxious, constipated, whatever the fuck you want to ask them, and, get those sorts of feedbacks. Perhaps if they answer honestly and the questions are well designed, you can see, sort of blips in the process. Oh, here's the moment in time when you got scared or got concerned or got cramps or got, whatever. It's that's not the way I would do it, but I can certainly see that working.
Interesting. Yeah, no, it's good. It's good. All right. Now, what if if we do that, and we identify it's stress related, or let's assume that there's always an inherent level of stress with a physique competition or any competition. And, Jordan Shallow, Dr. Jordan Shallow, I think you're well aware of. And, he would talk about, he would deliberately train at different places so he wouldn't get kind of too familiar. He would, kind of make it more challenging to do what he had to do with his lifts and whatnot when he was competing in powerlifting, just because, something might go wayward on the day. And I think he played professional hockey from memory. So
I believe so.
Yeah. So like with all that, he would, I think he played with the wrong size boots on at one game, and he still got the job done, kind of thing, because he exposed himself to adversity in all the environment leading up to it, so it didn't kind of bother him, I suppose. What have you got some? Wrap it up this discussion today. We haven't really talked about that much, just other than what I've been doing, but I do find this interesting, and something that if you those that are successful usually master this part of the process, then it is, I think, a huge influence on their physique and their performance, if you will, on the stage on the day. So what kind of things do you think, other than trialing, I suppose, like I mentioned, is something that they could do?
I'm going to do what I do is, one, universally, I kind of answer a different question you asked. And two, I kind of universally kind of go to a place you don't immediately expect. I'm going to do both of those things right now. And I'm going to throw out almost a dirty word, trenbolone. Hear me out. I am not a huge fan of trenbolone as an anabolic. I don't think it's that amazing. I'm not a huge fan of trenbolone because I find it tends to skew the psyche. However, the other unspoken effect of trenbolone is that it does have some corticosteroid receptor modulation capacities, meaning on the short term, it can give you some resistance against those varieties of stresses, and it can give you some interruption in the aldosterone loop, therefore preventing stress-induced water retention.
Yeah, wow.
Low dose, moderate to low dose trenbolone, proximal to the event, like 2 weeks proximal, can be more than sufficient to give you some pharmacological insurance against those sorts of fluctuations brought on by stress.
Interesting. So is it also, I mean, that's fascinating, because, for those that that respond well to it, there's an air of confidence and I guess getting the job done and focus, I suppose. But for me, when the brief time I used it, I wasn't necessarily had anxiety from it, but I was just so dread.
But if you go back, I believe that your experience was negative, because equally mine was as well. However, if you grab your notes, and you should do this, you look at the timeline, the effects on that sort of water retentive textural capacity of your physique were very quick, tended not to get better right about the point when the psychosis begins to come in. So it's my experience pretty consistently. I don't want to call it a free ride because that's a terrible language, but in terms of the psychotic effects, you seem to have about a 2-week free ride. So if you can get the physique modulation in 2 weeks, you only have the week or so aftermath of the contest to deal with. And to be honest, that's a shit show anyway. I tend to write it off.
Yeah, because and that would be probably dose related. Like I was 100 EOD kind of thing. So yeah, it wasn't probably, I got into it and it was all fine. And then I just kind of got a bit anxious about.
Right. And right about the time the wheels are falling off the wagon is when you really should be over it in terms of, needing it. But, and by the way, this is not like, Trenbolone should be standard procedure for all kinds. That's not what I'm fucking saying. I'm saying for those people that tend to have that sort of stress response, water retentive negative effect, I have found that is a valid tool. It works. And quite frankly, it's not a very hard sell. Trying to convince somebody, to use, a beta blocker or a fucking Valium or any of those things require more coercing and more explanation. And where you throw out a fan favorite like Trenbolone, their eyes go, well, tell me more about this, therapy of yours,
Yeah, Trenbolone therapy. Yeah. Okay. You heard it here. Fascinating. Okay. So that is something to take into consideration. What about, you mentioned Valium and that class of drug, and we have discussed that in one of our many sessions, and you quite like it if the athlete has access to it.
Yep.
The night before or day of, microdose day of, night before, quite a calm night of rest, maybe not deep quality sleep, but still they feel like they've rested. And that's an interesting thing. The fact that you feel rested, you will, have the effects of physiologically of a good night's sleep, even if we could argue the semantics of whether it actually allows a sleep. I mean, you are kind of sedated, but regardless, seems to help. And I've seen this firsthand with cramping. The guys and girls don't seem to get as much cramping the next day.
Absolutely.
There's I believe, a muscle relaxant. But yeah, like what about something like that and the other benefits that could come along with that? I mean, is that something? I mean, it seems so simple to kind of take some of that stress. And does it actually affect? Is it actually like the stress response? I mean, we're that can come from anywhere, but is it physical stress or psychological stress? Like,
the truth is, on a biological level, it really doesn't matter what the source of the stress is. It doesn't matter if it's a rock in your shoe or your spouse bitching at you. Literally, something I pointed out to a friend of mine, I don't mind throwing him under the bus, Hollywood. I pointed out a very simple and obvious thing. How often words escape people. They'll just use a word all day long and not really take a moment to internalize the word. And we were talking about assorted diseases. And the way we, in the English language, mispronounce our own language, it becomes a new word. It's disease. It's this special word. But when you say it really slowly in syllabic fashion, you're saying dis-ease. Anything that puts you ill at ease is a disease. So literally, it's a rock in your shoe. It's your wife bitching at you. It's the sun pounding on you. If it's pissing you off on some level, it's causing dis-ease. And a pharmacological intervention might prevent, if you can't turn off the sun, but you might turn off your panicking about it. You can't turn off your spouse legally, but you might be able to put a barrier between you and them. That's how those sorts of things would work. It really isn't it isn't the concept of what the stress is. It's that you can create a buffer between you and the stress.
Yes. So is that all right? So it takes said Valium, 5 milligrams or whatever. Have a good night's sleep. Linger in the next day, and you just don't get as wound up, and that not getting as wound up or perception that it's comp day,
Exactly.
And And that is what's doing it. The fact that you're not getting
Absolutely.
run back.
Your body creates the negative. It's your perception of what's going on. It's flight or fight. You run for your life. It isn't running that makes your adrenaline dump and your head pound. It's the fear of being eaten that goes along with the running. The same thing is here. It's not the act of competing that drives your cortisol to the moon and your adrenaline this way and you're that thing. It's your concern about it. It's your fear. The fear drives the response, not the other way around. The dog follows its nose, not the other way around.
Yes, very good. All right. Well, it sounds like there should be a Valium, close at hand if needed.
I'll throw in one more option, and I really don't know the status of this in your land of Oz, so this could be completely useless. However, I have been finding that THC can fill that exact same gap with even maybe a little teeny bit of additional benefit. Valium and assorted, particularly benzodiazepines, what have you, tend not to be particularly water retentive, but they also don't have any diuretic effect whatever. They don't help. Sure. However, THC has a minor diuretic and anti-inflammatory effect in its own right. It might actually be a better choice.
Interesting. So kind of day of show scenario, night before.
Absolutely. Evening before to get some decent sleep, morning of just to kind of put that sort of buffer of, I don't want to say apathy, but, just kind of a little bit of a shield between you and the real magnitude of stresses around you. I've seen it do wonders.
Interesting. Probably something you'd want to maybe trial as well leading into that.
Certainly. That's not a one-off. You definitely want a little practice with that. But again, like most things, that's not a real hard sell. It's not like you're, asking them to suddenly become vegan or something. It's a pretty easy sell.
Yeah. Very good. All right. That was excellent. Why don't I finish with one quick question? It'll be easy for you, I think. This is purely just because I got asked this, and this is normally when we talk about stuff anyway. So the guys can come along for the ride. So I got asked the question. Colleague coaches a female athlete, and potential wellness competitor, off season-ish, not anywhere near comp kind of thing, but use supplementation of the AAS kind, so supplements that would influence virilization to some degree. Obviously, that's individual specific, and a ton of reasons why or why not. There may or may not be more or less on said individual female choosing to use supplements. But she's using growth hormone at the moment in her kind of, I guess, as a stimulus for some growth, recovery, post comp kind of thing. Although she competed a little while ago. No insulin in the mix, so she's and that's a topic for another conversation. I'm not suggesting that GH and insulin needs to be used, but we have discussed that as a tool that can be utilized, and typically not having the baggage of virilization that the girls will often succumb to. But she kind of asked the question to her coach, who a colleague of mine, and said, and it's Evil Genius style cycling of growth hormone. So it's like, hey, can we cycle some Anavar, a couple of days on, a couple of days a week? Would that do too much? We cycle on and off the growth hormone, and then the response was something along the lines of, well, we cycle off the growth hormone. One of the few reasons would be to any potential side effects that may manifest, the carpal tunnel, fluid retention, these types of things will be a little less, which might be accumulative, because often the response will be, well, I don't get I get nothing in day 5, and then, I'm having 2 days off. It's like, yeah, but maybe 3 weeks of no break, and then you start and some get it in that 5 days. that reason, it's kind of was volunteered back, and but it was well, then it was, well, would I not get this many side effects if we just do a couple of days on and have the rest of the week off? What would be the benefit? Would I get some benefit using Anavar in this off-season type scenario if we, if we cycle the growth hormone to offset negative side effects or undesirable side effects? I know you don't like negative, positive kind of suggestion of things, but the virilization, or we'll refer to that being the effect that she wants to try and avoid. Your thoughts on that? Because I said, well, yeah, the GH, you're right, and also just the kind of a convenience thing. Typically 10 IU in a vial, and you get 5 days at 2 IU. It's all weird if you do 7 days. I said, but many do 7 days. Like it's not a hard fast. This is how you use growth hormone. It's just a way to use it that you're utilizing for those reasons. Thoughts on that?
Yep.
Just like okay, example. I'll give you an example just to finish off, then you can dive in.
Yep.
Okay, I'm wellness bikini. I got 2 lower body days. I'm going to take Manavar on those days, and will it have an effect? And the coach did say, well, you need systemic exposure to said compounds. They're in and out pretty quick. I don't know whether it would be worthwhile. Would you get any bang for your buck using Anavar? This is the question. 2 times a week for a female. I know the guys may not know that you're not a huge proponent of the actual physiological benefit of pre-training dosing of orals. Psychological, you come to the party and say, yeah, look, you might pop it and train the house down knowing that you just had something. But there are others that do suggest that it does have, some neural influence and meaningful effects, and as such, dosed pre-training is worthwhile with the orals. Thoughts? Unpack that one.
I'm going to go last point first. I'm not entirely. Maybe I've not been hyper clear, or maybe my views are morphing over time. But I'm not entirely convinced that pre-workout doesn't have some impact on the workout. It might have some neurological, water retentive something. However, that's a wild far cry from driving muscle growth. Again, training hard doesn't necessarily make you more muscular. It's recovering and driving the anabolic processes from training that makes you harder. I mean, fucking crystal meth can make you train really hard. I'm not really convinced that it's a solid anabolic tool. So again, this equating the train the house down with accelerated growth is wrong, because by and large, my experience is the reason most people don't grow is because they don't recover, meaning they either need to train less or dose more to balance the equation. So this whole, it's good because it makes you train hard. Like, I don't see any rational logic to that whatsoever. So now going back to the concept of a female and a hyper short course, 3 days. To me, that would be a fucking phenomenally short course. Here's the gig. Even in the case of growth hormone that you're cycling 5 days on and 2 days off, in reality, you're actually not, because there's 2 days of break, but the mechanisms, the binding proteins, and all the steps that go into it are more than 2 days sustainable. So it's really 5 days up and a trough, but not a trough to zero, and then 5 days on, and then a smaller trough, and then 5 days on. And by the 10th or so iteration of this, there's very little trough. So it really is every day on in the background.
Sure.
Now, in the case of anabolic steroids, well, actually, not even in just the case of anabolic steroids, actually kind of in the case of everything, but particularly in the case of anabolic steroids, where they're very short acting. An Anavar tablet has a 8 or so hour half-life. So you swallow 10 milligrams first thing in the morning, 8 hours later, you only have 5. 8 hours later, you only have 2.5. 8 hours later, you only have a fucking milligram. So you basically have none by the next morning. You swallow another 10 tablet, so on. So now you've got 72 hours of exposure. So just about the time all the mechanisms, the ribosomes, the cyclic AMP, all the things we've talked about in 100 podcasts, just about the time they're like, oh, yeah, okay, fucking message received, build some muscle. And then there's no follow-up to that message. Then a week later, you do the same thing, and all the troops are rallied, everybody good, and as soon as they get out on the battlefield, they're like, "What? Who are we fighting? What?" And they just wander off. So you're now taking drug to get to the muscle stage, but then you're never taking drug long enough to be into the muscle stage. So my attitude, and I'm confident there are those out there that will hold some other opinion. Fine. But my attitude is, if you're going to swallow one tablet of fucking Anavar, it better be for a minimum of 3 weeks. And I say that as a minimum. And then I also say typically as a maximum of 9. I think there's a zone there, 6 being the middle of that. I think 6 is a very good number. It's long enough to be into the muscle building zone, but not so far into it that the mustache and penis zone start, rushing up on you. But I think that, this sort of, and by the way, not to be anything other than historically accurate, this person is, quote, onto something insofar as 1,000 prominent people have thought about this over the last 100 years of drug use in sports. And I don't mean to be an ass, but there's a reason why it's not popular, because it doesn't fucking work. Oral steroids have been around about 100 years now. If that worked, somebody would have stumbled into that and been like, hey, I have this idea. It doesn't work, I'm afraid.
Right. What about, or maybe you'll retort by saying that, well, it's that initial 6-week or 3-week minimum, 9-week exposure, because there is a genomic alteration, isn't there? Like in 100%. The presence of these androgens and anabolic steroids, like the machine, that machinery that you mentioned, the ribosomes and all this communication, these anabolic processes are upregulated. Mm-hmm. And you kind of like, you wouldn't know for sure, but you would suspect it's that systemic exposure, that constant signal that this is the norm, these said compound is here influencing things, and that exposure to it is what kind of, I guess, upregulates things, but which lingers after that 9 weeks or 6 weeks. Then you have this kind of souped up, if you will, and be it, myonuclear addition or these types of things, but beyond that, just the actual machinery. Do you think that you're not getting any of that, or it's just not exposed long enough that every other day or a couple of days a week, like we're discussing in this hypothetical?
Well, interestingly, you mentioned every other day. Every other day, again, over an appropriate duration of weeks, might still have value. Dan Duchesne actually talked about that very thing. He was actually not necessarily a fan, but he had mentioned that was a thing that he had, proposed to some people, sort of, a full 50 milligram Anadrol tablet every other day, i.e. 25 milligrams a day, seemed to not work much different than 25 milligrams every day. So there's a difference there. But here's what I would suggest to somebody thinking about this. Think about fraternal twins, 10-year-old boy, 10-year-old girl. They're genetically more or less equal. They're twins, same parents, same everything, same birth date. Okay. Think about this. If you looked at how much testosterone does a male produce in puberty, you come up with a number of about 10 milligrams a day. That's more or less accurate. 10 milligrams a day for 10 years will turn a little boy into a man. So even if you were to make the argument that, each individual day has each individual value, how many days are in 10 years? It's pretty simple math. Then divide that out by the total net gain. The reality is, even if it was equitable and every single pill you put in your mouth was exactly one day's percentage of that total gain, it's so fucking nominal that it's not worth the cost of the tablet. It's like money in the bank. Only until your account is big enough does interest matter.
Yeah, that makes sense. It makes sense. Well, yeah, I guess now we've kind of explored it. It wouldn't do too much. A couple of days a week, would it?
No, I mean, can you tell the pubescent changes in a 10-year-old who, by the way, is more sensitive to androgens than a grown adult? Could you tell 3 days of maturation in a child, male or female, whether it's exposure to estrogen or exposure to androgens? Could you tell the difference between 3 days, like 3 weeks, 3 months? Yeah, those are numbers we know. Everyone said, like, oh my God, I think you're bigger than the last time I saw you. Like, yeah, a month ago. You don't ever, just like see somebody go in the next room and they come back and be like, are you fucking bigger? Like, no, it doesn't fucking work that way.
Yeah. All right. Very good. Well, hopefully, I'll have to forward this this little discussion we had, but I'll let him know. And he was kind of on the money. He basically said that yeah, you want that constant exposure to it, for it to have a meaningful influence. So, but she was kind of also, well, we cycle this, but I did mention the binding proteins and those types of things that so that doesn't go to waste. But very good. All right. Well, that's pretty much us done and dusted. I think it's been an hour, so we've rambled on enough. We could keep going, but if anyone does find this interesting, then thank you for tuning in. It's always my pleasure, Rod. So
100%, man. I enjoy it.
I look forward to doing it all again soon, and maybe, just maybe, I might get over to Olympia. You never know. We'll see.
I'll do everything in my power to make that happen.
No worries, mate. I will give you an SOS if I need to over the next couple of days with all the crew coming into comps on the weekend. But fingers crossed that luck that we discussed goes our way and we get them over the line, mate. I'll give you an update next week.
Thanks, man.
Adios, amigos.